Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of All the Good Men. Today, I am joined by Jose Alejandro, who is a master certified men's life and leadership coach. He also was my business coach at one point in time. He's a business consultant, a somatic practitioner, a men's work facilitator, and he's a Rite of Passage guide, which I am so excited to talk about today. He is one of the co-founders of the Modern Renaissance Man, which is a movement empowering self-led men to master themselves, really create a life that they love, that they are proud of, that fills them up with joy. And Jose's been doing this work for over 6 years. He's supported hundreds of men. He's definitely deeply masterful at what he does. He's supported men in business, in life transitions, and also in cultivating really healthy relationships, in supporting them in sort of a broad, wide range of life topics, relationships, business, general well-being, income, deepening purpose, deepening impact, and doing so with intention and integrity. So, Jose, welcome. It's so beautiful to have you here, and it's so good to see you. It's been a while. We worked together probably it was coming up on a year and a half ago, I want to say.
Yeah. I think it was end of 2022, maybe.
That's right. That's right. And it
Yeah,
was so great to work with you. I know you mostly work with men, but I was like, "Hey, I'm a men's coach and I'd love to work with
yeah,
a man on my men's coaching business." So,
yeah,
I so valued our time together. It was such a beautiful structure for what I was creating, and just love the way that you go about your work, your very keen eye, and the fact that there's this intuitive aspect really woven into your structure.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for that feedback, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to drop in with you in this way, and excited to see what unfolds in this conversation.
Yeah. So tell us a little about yourself. Where
Yeah,
are you at? What are you doing in life right now? What do you love to do? Tell me a little bit about you.
yeah. Well, you mentioned a lot of titles and different things that sound beautiful and are important in the bio, and also, that all is said, I get to say that, I'm a partner, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a grandson. I'm just a man who is deeply inspired to serve other men in the ways that I felt like, I needed some support around myself, right? So, right now, I'm at another threshold in my own life. So, what's present is I just leaned into a 3 year teacher training, right? So, and coming off of a 3 year apprenticeship to become a Rite of Passage guide. So, just deeply honoring, that process that I just came off of, and the journey of a lifetime that gets to unfold after finishing a long apprenticeship, and then also, student mindset, just going in and into this next phase, and noticing all the ways that all the things that I still get to learn, and all the ways that I get to explore more about myself and my leadership, and how I show up as a man in the
Hmm.
world. So that's most alive for me right now. And besides that, the last 2 weeks I spent with two of my fiance's little brothers.
Oh,
So I don't have any children, but it was really beautiful to see just how um, just see myself in them, and also realize that men working with men and taking care of children is not that different, right? So that's another thing that's really present, just like
hmm.
noticing all these little um, just expressions and patterns that they were bringing into the space. For kids, maybe it's about ice cream, but for men, it's about something else. But it's the same thing. So that's also what's present. Just noticing how we're all just little kids, just trying to
Yeah.
figure life out.
Truly, truly. I
Yeah.
remember working for it was like a business that held corporate events where a whole team would come and have like a team building experience. And I remember being so touched by how we're all just a bunch of toddlers just doing our thing. And it was so
Yeah.
clear, it was so obvious in those moments. But in the deepest parts of this work, it's really seeing that we're kids, we're grown-up kids,
Right.
and we have those same needs and wants and
Yeah.
everything in a different way, but that
Right.
really does
Right.
exist within us. It's
Yeah.
so humans are so charming.
They are, they are, and it's one thing. Like one example I want to bring. It's one of her brothers, the older one. He's 11 years old, and I was teaching him the concept of like try once, try twice, then ask for help, right? And it was like he was asking for help before trying, and it's the same thing we share with men when we're having a retreat or an experience, and they're asked for help before they try.
Yeah.
And then there's like the his brother who on the opposite side, it's like doesn't ask didn't wasn't asking for help, right? So he was just like doing it, and then struggling, and not seeking support. So it was interesting to see, like, just try once,
Mm,
try again. If you don't get it the second time, then ask for help. I don't want you not to ask for help. I'm here to support you, but I'm confident that 8 out of 10 times you're actually capable of doing the thing that
yeah.
you think you're not. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, in those moments with kids, we get to teach them, or we get to inspire in them courage and resilience and all of those things that we also get to inspire and encourage in ourselves and the people around us, our clients, our friends, of these things that we practice them when we're kids, and then we got to keep practicing them, especially if we
Yeah.
didn't learn it back when we were kids. And
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you are in partnership. You have a fiance.
Yes,
You're engaged. I don't know if I
I
knew that you were
do.
engaged.
Yes,
Yeah.
engaged. We've been
Amazing.
together 15 years, and
Wow.
I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday that it's 15 years, but it's not with the same person. It's
Mm,
like it's the same individual, but it feels like we've been through six different evolutions or
yeah.
relationships within the one relationship. So it's really
Yeah.
beautiful to see how that's been unfolded. But yeah, we're engaged, and most likely, end of next year, we're having the love ceremony, wedding.
Amazing.
So I'm excited about that.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I'm hearing you say that within your life there's this balancing, and there's this balancing act of relationship and of leadership and of all the work that you do with men, with the rites of passage work, with you doing your apprenticeship as well. And something that you teach men is around, you support them in relationships and love, and then you also teach them in business and leadership. So it's very much
Hmm.
what you are doing within your own life. And I think so many people sort of have this sense that we have to kind of pick one and dedicate to that, or that it's all too much and one's going to lack in some ways. And a lot of us do experience that, where it can feel like a lot to hold down healthy partnership, to also run a business, to also show up well for our clients, to also do well in how we lead, whether that's within our family or within our workplace, how we also continue to learn and apprentice. And I'm curious what your tools and structures are to find that balance in your purpose and your work and your mission and your leadership, and also in relationship and home life and all of that.
Yeah, well, great question. And I'll start off by saying that it's a practice. Just the other day, my men's team, I was sharing how I felt overwhelmed. Right, so it was like an acknowledgement of an area where both love leadership, my business and my relationship were kind of in a bit of, I guess, conflict within me because of what I'm stepping into, and how much I'm holding. And I mean, that's one of my tools, right? Is just having a container. That's probably been my biggest tool. And within that tool or resource, there's a bunch of other tools, right? Where just bringing how I feel into a space with men that I trust, that can maybe offer perspectives that I don't see. So, I shared I was overwhelmed, and it's something what I didn't see was something, an approach that I would recommend to any man, but because I'm in it, I didn't see it. So it's like someone one of the men in the team had reflected back to me like, well, have you thought about asking for your partner to take care of this until you're able to XYZ? And it's like, fuck, duh, you know. So one of the biggest resources has been to surround myself with men that I trust,
Yeah.
who can, support me in finding out creative ways to delegate, to approach things differently than I would if I was on my own, to ask powerful questions for me to come to my own solution. That's
Yeah.
been the biggest thing. And that can look like coaches, that can look like a men's team, that can look like a friend. I try my best at least once a week to reach out to a friend about something that I'm either having a challenge with or just checking in on them to see how they're doing. So that is always like the first thing I like to share, because oftentimes we think of resources, and I remember starting this journey, it was like, well, I don't have a men's team, or I don't know where to go. It's like, oh, let me call my best friend, see how he's doing, ask him if there's anything he needs support with, and then let him know what I'm going through, and maybe ask him for advice, for feedback, or for a question that can offer me
Hmm.
support. Right.
That's so beautiful and it's so important, and I think it's quite rare. I think a lot of men learn over time to not ask for support, to not lean on other people, and to ask for that is so beautiful because it also sets the tone. It gives other men permission to do the same.
Mm.
It gives your friends permission to do the same. It invites them to be vulnerable, and it starts to create a culture little by little, ripple by ripple. It creates a culture of we've got to be there for each other, and
Right.
we get to actually just ask each other for advice, or say, what would you do, or what do you have going on, or can I just run this by you? It's so important, and I see that so much more with women, and it's really beautiful to hear that you do that with your friends.
I was inspired by some other men's teams that I was a part of. The first one I created, it was literally in my living room with a couple of friends, and it took courage. It was like, okay, well, I'm confident that there's other men, most men, from just like the work I've been able to do with so many men, most men do crave to have that type of relationship with their friends.
Mm.
But someone has to open up first, right? Someone has to take that first step. So it was like, I remember, reaching out to a friend for the first time, and asking them how they are, and then they said good, and then me asking them, no, tell me a little bit more, what's present. And that was like a shift, like it was something they weren't used to.
Mm.
Um, and and then they shared, but then there was another time that I reached out to a friend, I did the same thing, and didn't feel comfortable sharing. So what I did instead was, oh, let me share first. Maybe that'll help. And then right after, he felt much safer in doing so.
Yeah.
So that's really at the core, like what all this other work that I've been doing for X amount of years. Like all of that work is really based on that foundation. It's like just vulnerability, trust, honesty, like all of it. All the other stuff is really just tools to access that, and create more, like peel back the layers of the things that don't allow us to do that. But at the core, it's as simple as like, hey bro, I need some support. Hey bro, how you doing? And yeah, it just takes some courage to ask and to reach out
Yeah,
to a friend, and speak in that way.
absolutely. And I find within, I also work as a coach, and I find that remembering to weave it all into everything that I'm sharing in my work, everything that I'm doing in my work, like the reason why I'm doing it is because it is my life, because it is my act of service, and to
Mm,
always bring that into community, friendship,
right.
all the areas of my life, so that it's not isolated to, no, this is my work and this is like what I get paid for, but like this is how I walk, this is how I live, this is how I create community, this is how, like I said before, these are the ripples that I'm creating, yes, in my work,
Yeah.
but also in every connection that I have.
Yeah, and that's really leadership.
Yeah.
That's embodied leadership, which brings up the conversation of just like a lot of the work that I do with men is around increasing their capacity to lead, and in love and in business. And oftentimes, guys, I know I did, look at the word leadership or hear that, and they think like, how many people am I managing, or how many people are listening to what I'm saying, or how many are impacted by this thing I created. And one of the first conversations I have with men, especially in modern Renaissance men, and just guys that are kind of taking that first big step beyond just the mental personal development game, but like really integrating it, is like anybody you interact with right now, including the friendships, like what we just spoke about, you are leading in some way, right? They're leading you. It's like you are inspiring something in them by the way you talk, by what you share, by the way that you create a safe space for them to be themselves, right? So once we just acknowledge, like, I am a leader in the relationships that I currently have, it creates this coherence and this just like opportunity to embody the values that oftentimes what I see men easily direct towards business but have difficulty bringing into the other areas of their life. It's like
Yeah.
integrity is so important, right? To a man's business, they talk about, I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I have a vision, we're going to reverse engineer it and make it happen. Then we go into relationships. Well, are you leading in the same way in your relationships? It's
Mm.
like, no. Well, maybe because you didn't consider yourself a leader in that space. But the truth is, whether it's one person, your partner, or 100 people in your job, or 10 clients, the same, it's mirror mirror images of each other, and
Yeah,
you can kind of create more opportunity to inspire others and more depth in both if you create what you just shared, that synchronicity and integrity between the two.
absolutely. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And
Right.
how you lead is really how you walk with integrity, how you walk with, here is not only how I care for myself, but here is how I attune to and care for the people within my care, the people within my realm, the people within my work, within my family.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you hold men's circles in Puerto Rico where you live, correct?
I do. I moved here 3 years ago and started to bring some of that work onto the island.
Amazing. What do those
Yeah.
look like? What are those events like that you hold there?
I mean, I moved here 3 years ago, after, like in the midst of the quarantine, and living in Jersey City, New Jersey was fun, being 10 minutes out of the city, until you can't leave your apartment, right? So coming back to the island was something that was a big part of my vision. Sam, my fiance, loves the island too, so we were really just in alignment to try it out. And for me personally, it was more than just like, um, this was where I was born and raised, and it's also, close to the beach and nature. All of that is beautiful, but there was like this deep calling to bring more, just of the resources and the containers that I have had the privilege of experiencing and being a part of, to the island, for men that look like me, the men that I deeply resonate with. So when I got here, I was deeply craving community, right? So there was like this desire to connect with like-minded men. So really, it started from a selfish place, just like, I wanna build relationships with men on the island, and and create new opportunities to see how, to support men who are already leading here and creating things, and share experiences with them. So the way I did that was, I brought MRM out here. So our organization, Modern Renaissance Man, we do these meetups, and they're usually free at different locations. And there's like, I'm gonna start a meetup. It's gonna be at the beach, and the focus is gonna be working out, getting into the body, and then just dropping into some conversation. So for the past 2.5 years, without missing, we've probably missed 2 weeks because the one of the men that co-leads it with me when I'm not there, he was doing his rite of passage. So, but the men still met up at the beach. So for the past 2.5 years, we've been meeting up at the beach every Wednesday and just creating space for men to get to know each other, to connect. Beyond that, that obviously creates just a step forward towards other opportunities. So I've also been doing immersions and retreats and a lot of different experiences here for guys that want to go a little bit deeper and really uh, you know do the work it takes to create the life you love and hold it without collapsing. But the most exciting container out of all of them has been the free weekly beach meetups. It's just so
Mm,
simple, and it's also reminded me of like um, it doesn't have to be that complicated, right? I'm trained and lead a lot of spaces that even like somatic release breath work and um, retreats and experiences that sometimes come with cathartic releases and deep like shadow work, and then some what I've realized, which is great, there's valuable, and for men that are willing to go there, awesome. But I've realized that something as simple as like just a space to go to every week where you see the same brothers, connect with new brothers, you can have a council where you share what you're going through.
mm,
That sometimes has a much bigger effect than a peak experience, really. Because oftentimes I think right now I see it a lot. There's a lot of peak experiences, but a lack of community, and oftentimes there's a lot of jumping from peak experience to peak experience. And oftentimes, I'll share with men who have been doing that, like pause the peak experiences for a year and just join a men's team that you see every week and watch what happens, right? And it's there's this new level of embodiment, of depth, of integrity, because you can't hide. It's no longer I've gotten this breakthrough realization and now you're left to your own devices and having difficulty integrating it, but you're just connecting with men and being honest about where you're at and where you're not integrating what you already know about yourself, right? So that's been the biggest thing I've been bringing into the island, and it seems to really resonate and been creating a lot of beautiful shifts.
yeah, that is so poignant. It's so true that we see peak experience to peak experience, and there's something so deeply beautiful and, like you said, cathartic about those peak experiences where you have this big release and you feel so different afterwards, and they're hugely powerful. They
Yes.
are these like I'm picturing like a thumbtack on a map. They are these points in time that we can utilize as this way to reimagine our life, to understand what's possible, to s- have a torch that
Mm,
shows you, oh, here's where I have been and here's what's available for me.
mm,
And they don't necessarily provide the tools for integration. So they can create this really big, beautiful, very important opportunity to see things in a different way, to feel things in a different way. But the power of showing up every week to a group, the power of showing up to a practice every day,
mhm,
those tend to be some of the deepest catalysts for really sustainable change in our lives. I've been noticing this recently. Actually, um, I've been doing a process where I show up to the same practice every single day, and it's so simple, but the changes that I've noticed in like 3 weeks are so much more profound than when I just go in for a moment and then come back out. But it's also so deeply supported by going in to those really, really deep experiences and then having something to integrate them with. So the combination of them feels so
yeah.
important when we're not chasing the big feeling, but rather we're experiencing those really deep, profound shifts, but also integrating them into life in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I'm curious what those practices are.
Yeah, totally. So I've recently been doing it's a shadow integration practice
Yeah,
of looking at sort of the core negative uh, limiting beliefs about self. I wouldn't even say just limiting, but like the worst thoughts we have about ourselves. And then it works all around hermetic principle, and it's incredible. It's looking at those deep beliefs and then their positive polarity and how to sort of integrate and work with the shadow in that way. And yeah,
yeah, that's beautiful, and I bet that you find something new, and you learn and find something new about yourself every time you do that practice, and also maybe deepen what you already knew about yourself and get a deeper understanding as well. It's like such fertile ground for depth and for curiosity and novelty as well. There's always something new when you do something in a structured, consistent way.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of rite of passage work. So there's the ordeal and the challenge that is a peak experience, right? And oftentimes we think that that is the center point or like the focus of the experience, but truth is that rite of passage work has three phases, and on the tail end, the third phase is incorporation. It's a process of integrating into community,
Yeah.
and the way I was trained, and the legacy that was passed down to me was like incorporation is a lifelong process, integration is a lifelong process. So yes, for example, with rite of passage work, often men that see a promo or a video about our rite of passage program, they're excited to do this peak experience because the easiest thing to kind of showcase in content is the wilderness piece, right? But that's only one piece of such a big experience that gets to be integrated and takes community, takes ongoing reflection, is just a lifelong process of deep practice and coming back to the intention of why you were out, why you went out there and did that challenge. So it's interesting, what you said about the peak experiences really resonates. So powerful, so necessary, because those peak experiences are thresholds, right? It's like this there's a part of us that breaks open, there's a part of us that dies in that process, and after, there needs to be a runway to really bring it into every aspect of our life in the most embodied and integrated way.
Absolutely. My husband Jeff has this really beautiful way of describing it. He says a peak experience or a medicine ceremony where you all of a sudden realize all of these things, it's like a flare. So you shoot it, like shoots up, and
Mm,
all of a sudden you can see everything. You see the whole layout of the land. It enlightens everything for this moment, and then it goes out. And then these tools that are shadow integration, showing up to your practice every day, showing up to the men's group every week, those are the torch. So you've got the flare that goes up, illuminates everything. Then you've got the torch. And this is all within, I forgot the context, which is that you're in like a labyrinth, right? And so you're
mm,
in the labyrinth of life, of the psyche, and you can all of a sudden you see from above, oh, there's a way I have to get out. But then you land back in, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I still got to find my way out now that I've seen the track.
yeah.
And then these tools that you weave into everyday life, that integration process, that's the torch, and that's how you learn to walk through and navigate through the labyrinth.
I love that analogy because it's like you get an idea and some clarity of the direction you're going in and where some of the twists and turns are, but there will still be some missteps along the way,
Yeah.
right? And it's you need that torch in order to see what the next step is, and so you don't trip over yourself, you don't make the wrong turn and end up somewhere that is not in alignment with the direction you want to take your life
Yeah.
in. So I think that's a beautiful analogy, and really, I mean, it helped me see just some ways that sometimes you need a friend to hold the torch for you or to bring another torch in order for you to see a couple steps ahead. Yeah, it's very useful.
Yeah, yeah. So you said there are 3 stages in the
Mm,
rites of passage. So the final one is the integration piece, and then one of the other ones is a wilderness excursion. Tell me more about
yeah.
those 3 stages.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, all of us are descendants of ancestors that practice nature-based coming-of-age rituals. So, like, if anyone really looked far enough, they would see that the ancestors practiced these rituals in order to support men to step into embodied integrated masculinity and provide for the community. It was literally a matter of life and death, and it was a matter of for the sake of the community's survival, right? And there's a proverb, African proverb, that says, if we don't initiate our boys into men, they will light the village on fire just to watch it burn, right? And it's a metaphor for life, just like how much of our leadership is really led by boys who are trying to, feel worthy, receive approval, gain more power in order to feel like grounded in themselves. And if the best analogy I can give to like the process of creating that initiation and that transition is the movie Lion King, right? So I used to love Lion King when I was about 4 years old. I would like rewind it at least 6 times a day and just watch it on repeat. And there was something about it that made me feel alive, but I didn't know it was Rite of Passage. You really think about it, Lion King is based on, like the traditional, just the hero's journey archetype and the journey of like, facing an ordeal, which really reveals your fears and overcoming that challenge and realizing what your true purpose is. Right? There's obviously more steps to that journey. I think it's 12 or 13, but ultimately that's what it's based on. If you think about Lion King, there's the part where his father dies or gets killed, and his uncle Scar makes him believe that it's his fault. Right? So he takes on a belief that he's unworthy of, living out his purpose. He's unworthy of staying where, where he's meant to be. So he goes off, he loses himself, and really distances himself from his true purpose. He might not even be aware. You can say he wasn't aware of what his true purpose was,
Mm.
and that right there then leads to a moment where Timon and Pumbaa come and remind him of who he is. So he starts questioning his reality. That's what we call severance, right? That's the first stage of a rite of passage where you've kind of heard the call. There's a part of you that wants to avoid it, but you know that there's something more for you. You know that there's something that needs to be let go of. And etymology of severance is like to cut, right? To sever. So there's a part of you that you recognize needs to be released and let go. And then that leads to the second piece, which is threshold, right? So this is the ordeal in Lion King. It's Simba coming back and deciding he has to confront his enemy, right? But really, his enemy is only a reflection of himself, his own fears, his own doubts, all the things that he's not facing in his life. They're embodied in this person that took his father's life and made him believe that he wasn't worthy of being a king. So oftentimes, when I talk about rite of passage and as I mentioned before, share about the wilderness piece and this ordeal, as men, we get excited like, okay, I'm gonna defeat this fear. I'm gonna face all these things that are keeping me from being who I want to be. Yes, and it's only one piece of this bigger puzzle. Like, first, we need to get clear on what you're letting go of, because a fast in the wilderness is just a fast in the wilderness unless you give it meaning, right? So, defeating Scar for Simba meant more than just there's someone in my position, I'm going to take it. No, it was, this person represents all the ways that I've abandoned myself. This person represents all the ways that I am afraid of my own power. So that challenge represents all of that.
Right.
Once we go through that challenge, here's the biggest piece is he is now king. He has to live up to that responsibility.
Mm.
So, yes, you had the peak experience. You faced your fears. You went into the shadow. You severed parts of yourself that are no longer in alignment. But the hardest piece for Simba, and I'm making an assumption, but I can see this in how it reflects in my own life, it's probably not defeating Scar. It was probably the weight and responsibility of being the king of the jungle and having to carry that with integrity. So, um, the integration piece, coming back to that, um, is is the most important piece. And before threshold, the most important piece, or the ordeal, whatever that looks like, typically is some sort of nature-based ritual or uncomfortable experience. Really doesn't have meaning without the severance piece and understanding of what needs to die in order for something to be reborn. So, to summarize, there's three stages: severance, and that is the part where we are getting clear on what needs to be released and what we want to step into. Threshold, where we get to face and really create conditions for clarity and understanding of, what our true power is, what our true purpose is, um, what our true self is before all the identities that were given to us. And then incorporation is the lifelong journey of integrating in community of other initiated men and bringing your gift and your vision to those that you love and everything you create.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
so beautifully put. And the what you shared there around like how important the context is. Why am I doing this? Why is this important in my life? What am I moving towards? That brings that intention in, where without that, it's just a trip in the forest. It's the context behind it, the depth of intention around who I am as a man, how I want to show up, why I'm here to do this in the first place is so, so, so deeply important.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all go through rites of passages, right? So, I often tell men that Um, graduating from high school is a rite of passage. Losing your virginity is a rite of
Yeah.
passage. Our first love, first heartbreak is a rite of passage. If you go into the military, the training is a rite of passage. And first losing a loved one is a rite of passage. And the list goes on. Any intense experience or any experience at all that marks the end of an era and the transition to another is a rite of passage. But we don't always have the container to actually uh, use that rite of passage in the most transformative way, right? So, an example would be a man becoming a father, right? It will be a rite of passage to become a father, but it's one thing to just know that, okay, this is where it marked me not being a father versus being a father. And I am surrounded by individuals that are supporting me and asking me what kind of father I want to be. Therefore, when I cross that threshold and there's a child that I now have to father, I am being supported in becoming the version of this new individual I want to be.
Exactly.
So, the community piece is such an important part, and the intention is such an important part.
Yeah.
And both of them kind of work together to make what could just be a transitional moment into a transformative moment.
The full recognition of how powerful that moment is, I think, gives more spaciousness for instead of just, whoa, everything in life is changing. It gives this moment of actual sacredness, of recognition of, wow, this is big, this is powerful. I am becoming somebody new. I need to become somebody new in order to exist within this new version of my life. And there isn't a lot of that, those containers anymore in the United States. I definitely don't see a lot of that. I study West African dance, and I was in Guinea last year studying with my teacher, and he was teaching me a song that was a rite of passage song. And the song was a song that the boys would sing the night before they began their initiation process.
Mm,
And they would sing this song. They would essentially call the men out, and they would look up at the stars, and they'd sing this song. And the song was basically singing, come look at the stars with us for our last night as children, basically, where we're
mm,
wondering at the stars, we're admiring the stars, we're feeling that youthful joy looking at the stars. Come enjoy it with us for this one last night of our childhood. And what really struck me there was the recognition of, I will not be the same person. I will not look at the stars the same way
mm,
when I'm done with this initiation. I am, there are songs to celebrate the letting go of one stage and moving into the next stage. And in Guinea, at least in the city, I'm not sure so much how it is in the Highland region and all of that, but he was saying that a lot of those traditions are melting away,
mm,
are maybe existent in some areas, but generally now the initiation, the rite of passages, you go to school, or if you're in a nearby village, you go into the city and go to school, and that it's a very diluted version of it. It's just kind of, well, now you go to the next thing. And I'm not sure the depth of what happens in the recognition of that, both culturally and within specific families. But a lot of those traditions he was sharing are not so prominent anymore. And I love that quote that you shared that really speaks to the importance of intentionally initiating from one stage to the next. What that quote represents to me is, if we don't properly have the support, the container, the initiation to move into the next stage, we're going to act out the need for that level of
mm,
structure, intensity, um, honoring of that massive shift in ways that are harmful. And so
mm.
the deep relevance and importance of having those moments honored. And I'm curious if you have thoughts around the ways in which society's relationship to masculinity, or to healthy masculinity, is negatively impacted by the lack of these rituals in today's day and age.
Yeah, beautifully said. There's a word that stuck out. You mentioned intensity, and I just want to speak to that for a moment. Just like, this is why, when there's no mark and official transition, we could put that intention and understanding of an evolution we are going through, of ourselves we're going through. It's why we see teenage boys acting out in all these different ways, right? Gangs, really risky behavior, right? Going into college, like, a lot of risky behavior, and whether that's alcohol or women or different things that we're seeking to find out about ourselves, and it's extended. It creates a bottleneck in adolescence, really, and it just keeps boys stuck in men's bodies for generations, trying to figure out what they're really made of,
Mm,
right? And to your question, I think it impacts society, tremendously. I think a lot of what we see, going back to leadership, a lot of what we see, the I can go down the list, but just the way that a lot of the leadership and ways that leadership moves in business, moves in politics, moves in all these different areas of life that impacts us, impacts the environment, impacts women, impacts just communities in all over the world in a negative way, comes from the lack of initiation. It truly it comes from the lack of that mark that helps a boy transition into a life, a selfish life, and into a life of service. Because the truth is that as kids, we're self-centered. Like everything, the world revolves around us. Our parents take care of all of our needs. We're often dependent on our community and receiving from our community without having to contribute much. It's like we're there to develop, and without them, wouldn't survive. But at some point, we need to contribute to our community. Otherwise, we are literally living our lives as a selfish child. And a lot of the leadership today, just because they are in leadership, right? And I'm talking about masculine leadership, um, does not mean they're actually leadership positions, does not mean that they're actually leading community, leading people for the sake of serving people, for the sake of serving nature. And really what's missing is reverence, right? There's like this lack of
Mm.
reverence that comes from uh, rite of passage work and initiatory work of just like my community has taken care of me. Every action I take will now impact my community. I'm no longer a child. Every action I take will impact those I lead. Every action I take will impact the women in my life. Every action I take will impact nature, right? And this is more than just about me in my lifetime, but like Native American understanding of generations, like 7 generations before, 7 generations to come. Like what you do impacts that whole range of community, not just those that you're with right now, and not just the things that you're doing in your life to benefit yourself or feel valuable.
Yeah, I love what you're saying because it speaks to the vastness of how important it is to have intention around community support for really powerful moments. And I just so deeply respect that you are creating this for people. And in the rites of passage initiations that you do, are they mostly for a certain age group? Are they for anybody who wants to do it, any man who wants to do it? What does that look like?
Yeah. Typically, for how we do it is 21 and over, but the focus with Threshold, which is the program, our Rite of Passage program in MRM, is for men who want to step into the next evolution of their life and leadership.
Mm.
Right. So it's men who are clear that there's something more for them. There's more gift to give and vision to live. And I share that because, when we talk about rite of passages, for most of this conversation, we spoke about transitioning from boy and into man. And I think that was the case in tribal communities, and our ancestors practice it that way. But really, rite of passage can be something that helps us transition into any new stage and evolution of our lives. So we've had men who are becoming fathers and want to step into that next evolution of their life and leadership in fatherhood and in other areas of their life. Men who are about to get married, men who just went through a divorce, men who feel like they want to learn more about themselves and get clear on their purpose outside of all the noise and outside of all the expectations and outside of all the identities that maybe they successfully led throughout their lives. So for the most part, the age, it doesn't, we've had a man, I think the oldest was 67, right? And the youngest, my fiance's brother, crossed the threshold. He was 18, right?
Mhm.
So it's less about age, but I find that it's more about men who are clear on that there's more for them to bring to the world, and they're craving to bring it at a deeper depth, and are ready to sacrifice something for the sake of a significant transformation, um, that allows them to feel like they've lived out their purpose in their life without leaving anything on the table, right?
Mm.
That's usually the type of man that's called to do this type of work with us.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love like threshold work, any of that transitional work of I'm moving from one place into another. It touches something so deeply within me. I sometimes refer to myself as a door dweller. I love those spaces where it's kind of in between, and there's also this process of moving from one to the other. Sometimes when I'm at parties, I'll literally just stand in a doorway and hang out there and like observe the two rooms and have a sweet little moment, little like
Yeah. In
blip of a
between
moment
worlds.
with whoever's passing through the doorway. I love that space, both in a very metaphorical, profound way, and also just I like hanging out there. It somehow feels
Yeah.
fun. But there's something so beautiful when we're in those moments of transition, when we're in those moments in life where we are shifting from one thing into the next and honoring that shift. There's a particular, it's like a vibrancy. There's this aliveness in those moments of, it feels like there's extra breath in those moments
Right.
of potential and of the act of simultaneously letting go of something and moving forwards into the next. The courage, the bravery, the vulnerability that is required and that naturally bubbles up in those moments is so deeply beautiful. It's so,
Yeah.
so beautiful.
It's sacred,
It really
really.
truly is.
Those in between spaces are sacred. It's like it's the cocoon, right? The caterpillar cocoon, butterfly. That cocoon, we don't really see it often, right? We see the caterpillar, we see the butterfly, whether it's like just visually or just like in conversation. But the cocoon, is that in between space is sacred. Like that is what allows that transformation to occur. It's probably the most what we need the most in society right now is like spaces where people can safely be transition and be in those in between spaces so that they can you know be themselves, really. Like it's just you're finding yourself in that moment, like when you're in between the door. It sounds so simple, but like there's something that you recognize and see in the room that you were in. There's something that you also appreciate about what's over here, and it's like, how can I step into the other room and bring those parts of me that are still bringing me life?
Yeah.
And you need to be in that in between moment to appreciate both and have compassion for what was too. That's another
Mm.
piece of just like honoring, like, yeah, this was part of me. This is who I was. This is the room I was in, and it served me so well to this moment in my life. And I get to step into this other room with everything that I've learned from this room, but without having to feel locked in that container, right? And I
Right.
think so much would be solved in society if we continue to pour into creating spaces that allow that sacred moment to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you recommend if a man is like, okay, I'm in this moment where I know that I'm going through this transition. I know I'm moving through something big and I don't necessarily have the structures in my life to support me. What would you recommend that they do in order to really move through those moments of transition with integrity, with reverence, with sacredness?
Yeah, I think it's important to find individuals that either have been through that or carry the values that you feel like will support you in being the best version of that person that you are stepping into. And almost like, rite of passage work has a lot to do with creating an archetype of the man you want to be, but not just using your father as that figure, because every person has gaps. It's using a community of men that inspire you and carry the values and move in the way that you want to move. And even if you don't have access to them, it's like, social media, you can find men who aren't necessarily creating content about fatherhood and how to be a good father, but you can see that they post like these beautiful videos of them spending time with their kids. You can see that maybe they share vulnerably some challenges that they had. Like, find those men, and that is a great first step. It's
Yeah.
like giving yourself um, an opportunity to enact different aspects of different, enact different aspects of yourself and of others that perhaps you didn't have the opportunity to have close contact with when you were growing up.
Right. Yeah, it's like building the model
Right.
out of the people that you see who you look up to. This is something that when I ask a lot of my clients, who did you look up to as a kid, who were your positive role models of masculinity, a lot of them say I didn't have anyone, or I had like
Right.
maybe one person, but not this well-rounded, because a lot of them didn't grow up in places where they had really positive, where their communities had positive relationships to healthy masculinity. And so I think looking around for those positive role models, and also looking at, well, what was missing and what do I wish I had? And with archetype work, right, it's like those, the archetypes are inherently within us. And so when we can kind of
Right.
build out the archetype of, well, I know I didn't get that, and so what I wish I had had would be this, and to create this image of this man who you know you can be, to create the archetype that you can dream into, feel into. Like, I love this when I work with clients and I ask them to feel into a specific archetype or the man that they really want to become, whether that's in the bedroom or in their relationship, whatever it is. 9.5 times out of 10, the first thing that they do is sit up straighter. The first thing that they do is they shift their posture. There's a little like wiggle that happens to like settle in. They maybe like pull their neck up. There's an embodied shift that happens just simply from placing their attention on who they are becoming, who they want to embody, how they want to hold themselves. And so much of archetype work, it's inspired by, informed by the people who we can look up to, and then also the version of ourselves that we know we are, like that we have access to if we go in and down.
Which is what inspiration is, right? Like, it only inspires us because there's a part of us that is being awakened by it. And
Exactly.
one exercise, just to bring it back to role models, as simple. One of my favorite movies is Gladiator, right? And I didn't know anything about archetype work. I wasn't in men's work when I first saw it. But there was a part of me that knew that there were characters that they brought something out of me, like, wow, like something, the way he moves is the simplest way to put it. The way this character moves inspires me to be more like that. And the way this character moves is like, I do not want to be that guy. And one great practice is like watch movies like 300, like Lion King, like um, Gladiator, movies that have different archetypes, and take a notebook, and literally, this is a practice I've done, is write down, why does Marcus Aurelius, what did I like about this scene, or what are some qualities he brought in his, like his character brought, and you'll literally have them written down. It's just like, oh, he was honest. He didn't brag. He also owned his power when he had to. Like, how can I do a little bit more of that in my life? And I
Yeah.
guarantee that 1% shift creates such a big difference in the way you show up in the world. So that's something I've practiced. I have men practice as well. It's like, if you can't think of mentors, it feels overwhelming to search social media. It's like, read a story, watch a movie, and write down what inspires you, write down what turns you off about characters. And right there on that page, is a description of the type of man that you want to be.
Oh, I love that. I love that practice. I love that. When sometimes when I have either a mentor or a character who I looked up to, or a friend who I really respect how they move through life, I'll often, if I don't know exactly what to do in a moment, I'll just feel into, well, what would they do, or what would they guide me to do in this moment. And with when it's a friendship, like they might actually guide me to do something totally different, but what it does is it lets me tap into my own understanding of them, my own positive projections on them, and it actually allows me to get guidance from them in, well, what would this person do in this moment, and how
Mm.
can I, it's like the what would Jesus do?
Right.
How do I align to what somebody I really deeply look up to, what I believe or I perceive they would do, and how do I allow that to influence how I carry myself, how I do everything. Yes, how I tell the truth, but literally like how I make my bed in the morning, how I feed myself, how I eat the food that I make, all the little actions, because that's who makes us the people we are. It's all those little ways of doing everything.
Yeah, that's it right there, and that full circle that goes back to the power of community, because
Mhm.
all those habits, one thing is getting clear on them. And I work with a lot of self-led men. So when I say self-led, I mean men who are self-motivated, self-inspired, self-disciplined. They've looked in the mirror and decided to take ownership of their life in some way. But a mirror only gives you, it doesn't give you a 360 view, right? So you can only see what's in front of you. And oftentimes we get in our own way as well. So that path of like identifying it, taking the first steps, that automatically changes your life. And then to take it a step further, surrounding yourself with other mirrors that can like, oh, that's the type of man that you want to be. I have no expectations because I just want you to be the man that you want to be. So I'm gonna reflect back to you when you're not meeting this quality or value, or you're not following through on this thing that you said you're gonna do.
Yeah.
It just raises our standards so much higher when one, we take our independent power and we put ourselves in a container with other independent men who want to support each other in being, that version of themselves that they're inspired to be by whatever it is that inspired them
Yeah.
to incorporate it in their archetype.
It's so playful too. It's really like all of this work, it's so deep, it's so profound, but it's so enjoyable to get to embody different archetypes, to get to try on new versions of ourselves and grow and expand in that way. It's so amazing. So, unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, and the audio from the last few minutes of my conversation with Jose got cut out. But I am so deeply grateful for this conversation and for the work that Jose is doing in the world as a men's work facilitator, and specifically in his work as a Rites of Passage guide. It's so deeply important, so deeply profound to have this accessible to boys and to men today. So if you're curious to learn more about Jose's work, you can find him on Instagram at rjose_alejandro. So that's RJOSE underscore ALEJANDRO, or at josealejandro.co. Thank you so much, Jose. What a beautiful, beautiful conversation. It's so wonderful to know that men like you doing this incredible work exist out there.